Hi there, this is Mohammed from mathspy.com, and on today's video we're going to be going through completing the square and specifically more difficult examples that involve the coefficient a being bigger than 1 in front of the x squared term, things like 3x squared, anything that starts like that, 3x squared, 5x squared and so on. I'll be showing you how to put it into the correct form by the process of completing the square. So let's go straight into an example. Let's take 4x squared plus 12x plus 7, and we'll go through the various stages here. First step, take 4 out of the first two terms. So you take 4, open a bracket, taking 4 out of the first term leaves x squared, and the second term will leave positive 3x, and then you just leave the plus 7 there separately. So now we're going to complete the square for the part inside the brackets. Now you just want to follow the normal process for completing the square here, but just paying attention also to what happens to the 4 that's on the outside and the 7. So let's go through that. So what you want to do here is still write the 4. Now you want to open up a bigger bracket, and now completing the square for x squared plus 3x, you would want a single bracket that's going to be squared, and inside the bracket you will have x plus 3 over 2. When we're completing the square, we always take this term and we divide it by 2. So in this case we get 3 over 2. You always want to be using fractions here, avoid using decimals. We're going to be going through all the methods we'll be doing today involve without a calculator, and they should be methods that you will be able to do totally without a calculator and just using your mental maths and basic rules of fractions. So continuing from there, the next step for completing the square is always to subtract this value squared. Now you just want to do that immediately. When you're squaring a fraction, just square the top and the bottom, so that's going to become 9 over 4. We then close the large bracket and we still have the plus 7 outside. Now what we want to do is get rid of these larger brackets by multiplying the 4 into these terms. Now multiplying the 4 against this term here is just going to place the 4 in front of the bracket, which I'll show you here. 4, open bracket, x plus 3 over 2 squared, and multiplying negative 9 over 4 by 4 will just give you negative 9. Now if you're having trouble sort of doing this with speed, it just takes practice to be able to do the fractions part quickly, but if you want to write a separate note such as 4 times negative 9 over 4, you'll see that that just becomes 4 over 1 times negative 9 over 4. Now what you want to do here is cross multiplication, so you can see here that the 4's would cancel, or leaving 1 and 1, and the final answer will be negative 9. But obviously with practice you'll be able to do that in your head. So continuing from here, we would still also have the plus 7. So then all you need to do on the last line is add together the two constant terms, and that gives us minus 2. And that's our first example of completing the square with a number in front. In this case it was 4x squared, and those are the steps. So let's go straight into a second example. This time let's take 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. First step, take 2 out of the first two terms. That will give us x squared minus 5 over 2x inside the bracket, leaving the plus 3 outside. We then complete the square for this part, leaving everything else the same, which means we need a 2 here and open up a large bracket. Completing the square here will give us x minus 5 over 4 squared minus 25 over 16. And then the plus 3 outside. So I did a couple of calculations there with the fractions, and I just did them sort of very quickly. But just so you can see how easy these can be, all I've done here is take the 5 over 2 And when you're completing a square, you're dividing that by 2. So all you're doing is this. You're doing 5 over 2 divided by 2 over 1. Now when you're dividing something by 2 when you're dealing with fractions, you should always think of it in this way, which is you're not dividing by 2, you're multiplying by a half. And then immediately you'll know that it's 5 over 4. Now with practice, you'll be able to do that without writing any of this part out. But until you get comfortable with that, feel free to write it out separately. The other calculation I did was I squared 5 over 4 and wrote 25 over 16. So as I said on the previous example, that's very simple. 5 over 4 all squared. All it means is that you're squaring the numerator and the denominator, and that's how quite easily you will get 25 over 16. Don't feel that you need to show working for that, but if you're unsure of the answer, like I said, do the working on the side. Also note that even though it's subtract here and you're squaring it, you're actually only squaring this positive value. It's always negative at this stage. It's always minus. Whether it's plus or minus in here, it makes no difference. It's always subtract the square of this, the square of 5 over 4 in this case. So it's always, in this case, it will be subtract 25 over 16. The next part, we're going to multiply the 2 into the large brackets. So quite simply, the 2 will go in front of our squared bracket here. And then we're going to do negative 25 over 16 times 2. This gives negative 25 over 8. And I'll show you here how you could do that quickly also. So we're doing 25 over 16 times 2 means times 2 over 1. And then once again, you want to cancel, cross cancel diagonally. Dividing both of those terms by 2 gives 1 and 8. And that's how you get 25 over 8. The more you practice this, the less you will have to write this on the side, and you'll be able to do it immediately. Let's not forget the plus 3. And then for the last line, we just need to simplify those constant terms there. So this part is all going to stay the same, and we just need to add together these fractions. So adding together those constant terms here, that's going to give us minus 1/8. I'll just go through how I did that. Let me clear some space here. Taking these two terms, yes, you're basically doing 3 take away 25 over 8, which is the same as 3 over 1 take away 25 over 8. Getting common denominator here, which would be 8, the numerator there is going to change to 24. So it's 24 minus 25, and that will give you negative 1/8. This is also something that with practice you'll be able to do in your head, but of course, as I've said from the start, just write this out if you're unsure. It takes a lot of practice. When I see something like this, I know I'm dealing with eighths, so I immediately would change 3 to 24/8. So if you want to get to that kind of standard where you're able to do it in your head, you need to think about fractions in that way, always thinking of 3 as though it's 3 over 1, and then changing that to 24 over 8. You will end up just doing a very simple sum, which is minus 25 plus 24, as we can see here, or 24 minus 25, and that gives you the negative 1/8. But feel free to show working. As with all maths, the most important thing is that you get it correct. So do what you need to do to get it correct, and don't worry about doing it too quickly if there's a chance that you're going to get it wrong. Let's have a look at a further example. So let's take 3x squared. Let's do minus 7x minus 4. And this time I'm going to try and go through the whole process without writing any of the fraction calculations on the side, just to show you how you would be able to do this in your head. So second line here, taking 3 out of the first two terms. 7 doesn't divide by 3, so we just do 7/3 x. And the minus 4 stays outside. Next line, take the 3, open a large bracket, and now we complete the square. Dividing this term by 2, gives me 7 over 6, all squared. Take away the square of that term, squaring the top and bottom as I said before, gives that. We then multiply out the large brackets. The 3 just goes in front of our squared brackets there. Multiplying this term by 3, I know that the 3 goes into the 36, that's going to cancel it diagonally, giving negative 49 over 12. And if I want to do it super quick here, I may as well change the 4 now to over 12. And that's going to be 48. And that takes me to the last line. All of this stuff is staying the same, and we just need to simplify those two constant terms. And that's going to be negative 97 over 12. And that would be the full process for completing the square. The methods that you use here in terms of fractions, algebra, manipulation are going to be very useful as you develop into more advanced mathematics. So I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you on the next video.